truth is rejected because it requires change. Now, I spoke a little bit earlier in a previous video about Juneteenth and the history of Juneteenth. And I had several pieces of historical information. And really, it's a shame that most people don't really know the history of America and the American Civil War. I know that just from watching current events, which I normally don't really talk much about current events unless it has something to do with economic reparations. But I know from looking at current events that most people don't really know their history. So, and in relation to Juneteenth, I want people to remember, I know black people really a lot of times have a negative view of how a lot of white people, as we call them, look at our situation. And really, you have to realize that black and white is a construct, and it's really a way for the wealthy to keep us divided so that they can really laugh all the way to the bank on us. And that goes back to economic reparations. But having said that, you have to keep in mind that during the Civil War, which, Juneteenth is part of the ending of the Civil War, you have to remember that around 360,000 Union troops gave their lives for black people to be free. Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, and but the Confederate States, they weren't trying to hear that. They was trying to maintain their slavery, their free labor. So you have to remember, a lot of people on the Union side, white people, you had black troops too, now don't get me wrong. At the end of the war, you had a lot of 50, 60, 70,000 black troops, but the majority of the people who began and maintained the Civil War, even through construction, was white people, as we would term them, which is really a bad way to even put it. But that's the label that we've been given and we've accepted through our conditioning here in the United States. So, but anyway, about 420,000 died on the Confederate side. Now, when you put them numbers together, you got almost, not quite, but you got close to 1 million people, a little bit less, maybe 8, that perished in the Civil War. That's how serious an issue it was, So, these people was determined to keep us enslaved. And on the other side, you had the people that was determined to free us from slavery and keep the country together as the United States of America. So believe me, if the Union had lost that Civil War, we probably wouldn't even be calling the United States of America. It'll be a different name. You understand what you really don't understand what I'm saying. So a lot of times people get caught up into where they naming the bases after these Confederate generals. Well, which is a slap in the face to all the 360,000 people on the Union side that gave their lives. But the people in Washington, D.C. allowed them to do that. Maybe they're afraid still of the South. I don't know. But I feel like it's total disrespect for those people who gave their lives to preserve the nation. Abraham Lincoln himself, because he was assassinated, You know, it's a total disrespect for those people who gave their lives to keep the United States together. So when you celebrate it on July the 4th, you know, you can't be celebrating the victory of the Union, because most of y'all following up this Confederate foolishness. But, you know, they surrendered. They lost. Thankfully, for my ancestors' sake, anyway, and for the United States' sake, too. They lost on April 9th, 1865. They gave it up. You know, so just keep in mind that political fact when you think about history. Remember who won the war and how many people died. So I just want people to remember, you know, you always say when you're talking about veterans that you're going to remember them forever, you know, but really you just kind of like lying, you know, because those 360,000 Americans who died on the Union side, they died to keep this country together as one, you know. So every time you put one of them Confederate generals' name on a damn military base, a ship, you know, or even a tank, you disrespecting them people who fought to keep this country as one. So just keep that in mind. And, you know, when you control a man's thinking, you don't have to worry about his actions. He will find his proper place. His education makes it necessary. So remember your history and be proud of it. And remember the people that died to keep us free.